You know what hurts more than being yelled at? Being erased quietly. Being made to feel like you take up too much space just by existing. Like your presence is an inconvenience nobody asked for. That's what my family did to me for years. And I let them, because I thought that's just how families work. Some people carry the weight, and some people get carried. I was always the one carrying. I just didn't realize they'd eventually ask me to carry them off a cliff. My name is Ivy. I'm 31 years old. I work as a hospital billing coordinator in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a one-bedroom apartment that I pay for myself, a credit score I built from scratch, and a therapist I started seeing 2 years ago who told me something I wrote on a sticky note and put on my bathroom mirror. The fact that they don't see your value doesn't mean the value isn't there. I come from a family of 5. My older brother, who I'll call my brother because that's all he deserves to be called in this story, is 35. My younger sister is 26. My parents have been married for 38 years and they still act like my brother is the best thing that ever happened to this family, which is interesting because objectively he is not. Growing up, I was the middle child, which means I was the invisible child. My brother got everything, the attention, the money for college, the benefit of every doubt. When he failed out of his first semester at NC State, my parents called it a rough adjustment period. When I got a B- in AP Chemistry, my mother sat me down and told me I needed to try harder because I had real potential, unlike my brother who just learns differently. What she meant was, my brother gets excuses and you get expectations. My sister came along 5 years after me and she was, immediately, the baby, the one who needed protecting, the one who cried and got held, the one who could walk into any room and have my mother's full attention within 30 seconds. I was in the middle. I learned to be quiet about what I needed. I bought my first car at 22 with money I saved working double shifts at a restaurant all through college. No help. My parents co-signed my brother's car loan that same year. A used Jeep he totaled 8 months later. They never asked me if I needed anything. I built my credit carefully, religiously. A secured credit card at 19, a small personal loan I paid off in full, my first apartment at 23. I checked my score the way some people check the weather, constantly, because I knew it was the only thing standing between me and having to ask anyone in my family for anything. I never wanted to need them. But I still loved them. That's the part nobody tells you about complicated families. You can love people who treat you badly. You can miss people who don't miss you back. You can show up to every holiday dinner even when you leave feeling smaller than when you arrived. I showed up. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday. I bought thoughtful gifts and remembered details about my niece's soccer games and my brother's work drama and my sister's new boyfriend. I asked questions. I listened. I stayed. And for a long time, I told myself that was enough. Last year, my parents decided to sell the house I grew up in and downsize to a condo in Raleigh. It was a big decision and they called a family meeting to discuss the plan, divide up any items from the house, and get everyone on the same page, which is how my mother phrased it in the group text. I drove 2 hours to be there. When I walked in, my brother was already on the couch with a beer. My sister was cross-legged on the floor doing something on her phone, and my parents were at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of them. Nobody looked up when I came in. I said hello. My mother nodded. My father said, "Close the door." That was the greeting. We sat down and my parents started walking through the plan. The condo. The timeline. Which furniture was going where? My brother wanted the dining room table, solid oak. My grandfather built it. And my parents said of course. My sister wanted the vintage mirror from the hallway and my mother said she could have it. Nobody asked me what I wanted. I waited. I thought maybe they were just going in order, oldest to youngest, and they'd get to me. They didn't. They moved on to finances, the house sale. How they'd split some of the proceeds to help my brother pay off a debt he'd been carrying and help my sister with her student loans. I sat very still. My father looked at a paper in front of him and said they'd also need someone to co-sign on the condo mortgage, since their income had dropped in retirement and the bank wanted an additional guarantor. He looked at my brother first. My brother made a face and said his own credit situation was complicated right now, which I knew meant bad, because I'd heard from my sister that he'd missed 6 months of car payments on his second car, the one he bought after totaling the Jeep. My father looked at my sister. She shrugged and said she'd just applied for a new credit card and didn't want anything to affect her score. Then my father looked at me. "Your credit's good, right?" 3 seconds. That's how long I sat there before I answered. 3 seconds where I thought about all of it: the dining room table nobody offered me, the money for my brother's debt, the years of driving 2 hours to be invisible in a room full of people who shared my last name. "It is," I said. "We'd need you to co-sign," my mother said, like it was a logistics problem. Like I was a resource to be deployed. It shouldn't affect you much. I want to explain something about co-signing a mortgage because this matters. When you co-sign a mortgage, you are legally responsible for that debt. If the primary borrower's miss payments, it shows up on your credit. If they default, the lender can come after you. Your debt-to-income ratio changes. Your ability to get your own mortgage, which I had been carefully, quietly working toward for 3 years, gets directly impacted. It's not a favor. It's a financial risk that can follow you for 30 years. I knew all of this. I had researched it the way I research everything, quietly and thoroughly, because nobody in my family ever sat me down and explained how money works. I figured it out myself. I said, "I need to think about it." My brother snorted. Actually snorted, like I'd said something ridiculous. My sister looked up from her phone for the first time. "It's not that complicated, Ivy." "It actually is," I said. That's when my mother sighed. The specific sigh she's had my entire life. The one that means, here we go. The difficult one is being difficult again. "We're not asking you to do anything extreme," she said. "This is family." "Right," I said. "Family." My brother leaned back on the couch. "I don't know why you always make everything so hard." And I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I thought about the oak table, the car loan they co-signed, the debt they were paying off for him with the house sale proceeds. I thought about how the word family apparently meant different things to different people in this room. "I'm not making anything hard," I said. I need to think about it. My sister rolled her eyes. And then my mother said the thing. She said, "Honestly, Ivy, I don't know why you even came today. You never really participate in this family anyway." The room went quiet. I looked at my mother. She held my gaze, and I watched her decide not to take it back. My father looked at his papers. My brother took a sip of his beer. My sister went back to her phone. "You never really participate in this family anyway." I had driven 2 hours. I had shown up to every dinner, every holiday, every birthday. I had bought the gifts and made the calls and asked the questions and stayed. "You never really participate." I picked up my purse. I stood up. I was very, very calm. And I want you to understand that the calm was not peace. It was something colder than peace. It was the feeling of a door closing somewhere deep inside me. "Okay," I said, and I walked out. Nobody followed me to the door. Nobody called after me. I sat in my car in their driveway for exactly 4 minutes. I remember because I watched the clock, and then I drove away. I cried for about 40 miles on I-85, and then I stopped. Because crying felt like giving them something, and I didn't want to give them anything anymore. I didn't call my mother that week. I didn't text my father. When my sister sent me a message 3 days later that just said, "So are you going to co-sign or not?" I didn't answer. The following Friday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was a loan officer from a bank in Raleigh asking me to call back regarding a co-signer application my parents had apparently already submitted with my name on it. They had submitted an application with my name, without my consent. I want you to let that sit for a second. They had already told the bank yes. They had already listed me as the guarantor. They were waiting for me to just sign the paperwork they had already decided I would sign, because why wouldn't I? I was family. I participated in this family, didn't I? I called the loan officer back and I explained very politely that I had not agreed to co-sign and that I was formally withdrawing my name from the application. The loan officer was professional about it, said it happened sometimes, asked me to send a written statement. I sent it that afternoon. 2 days later, my phone started ringing. My mother, 4 times in one morning. My father, twice. My brother called from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized the area code. My sister texted, Ivy, what did you do? The bank called Mom and said you withdrew. I didn't answer any of it. My therapist, when I told her, asked me how I felt. I said I felt like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for 31 years. She said that made sense. My mother left a voicemail that I still have saved on my phone. I've listened to it maybe twice. Her voice is more confused than angry, like she genuinely cannot understand what happened. She says, I don't know what we did wrong, Ivy. I don't know why you're doing this. We're your family. We need you. She says we need you like it's supposed to mean something. Like need and love are the same thing. Like being needed is what I was waiting to hear. I was not waiting to hear that I was needed. I had been waiting my entire life to feel wanted. There's a difference, a significant one. You can need a plumber and not want them at your dinner table. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life, and not in a bad way. Strange like quiet. Strange like I kept reaching for my phone to call my mother and then remembering I didn't have to. Strange like Sunday mornings with no obligation attached to them. I started sleeping better almost immediately. I didn't expect that. My brother left me a message somewhere around week 3. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that I was being selfish, that I was hurting the whole family, that the condo deal was on hold because of me, and that I needed to grow up. He said I'd always been like this, always making myself the center of everything, always creating drama. This was the most I'd ever heard my brother say about me in my life. It was strange to discover he had opinions. I did not respond. My father texted me in week 5. Just one line, your mother isn't doing well, she misses you. I read it. I put my phone face down. I went back to the book I was reading. My therapist asked me once if I felt guilty. I told her yes, sometimes at 2 in the morning when the house is quiet and I think about my mother's face. I told her it was a specific kind of guilt. Not the guilt of having done something wrong, but the guilt of having stopped doing something I'd been trained to do. The guilt of taking up the space I was always told I was taking up too much of. She said that was worth examining. I examined it. I decided the guilt was an old habit. And I was working on replacing old habits with better ones. About 3 months after the family meeting, I found out through a cousin, a distant one, the kind that exists on the edge of every family, collecting information, that my brother had tried to get the mortgage on his own and been denied because of his credit. That my parents had tried 2 other co-signer options, both of which fell through. That the house sale had closed and the money was sitting in an account while they figured out what to do. That same week, my sister posted something on Instagram, a long caption, the kind people write when they want credit for being honest. She talked about how family was complicated, how she'd been reflecting, how sometimes we don't show enough appreciation for the people who are always there. She tagged me in it. I untagged myself and didn't respond. 2 days later, she texted me directly. She said she was sorry. She said she knew the family meeting had gone badly. She said she should have spoken up, and she didn't, and she regretted it. She said she missed me. It was the most genuine thing my sister had ever said to me. And I sat with it for a long time, because I am not someone who needs people to stay broken. I don't want my family to feel bad forever. I just wanted them to understand what they had actually done. I texted her back. I said, I appreciate you saying this. I need more time. She said she understood. She didn't push. That was different. My mother sent me a letter. An actual letter, handwritten, 4 pages. She talked about growing up in a family where the oldest child was always the priority and how she'd never questioned it because she'd thought that was just how it worked. She said she hadn't realized she'd done the same thing to me. She said she was sorry for what she said at the meeting. She said it wasn't true, and she'd known it wasn't true even as she said it, and she didn't know why she said it anyway. That's the part that got me. I knew it wasn't true and I said it anyway, because that is the cruelest kind of thing to say to someone, not cruelty from ignorance. Cruelty from a choice. I read the letter 3 times. I put it in a drawer. I haven't responded yet. I might. I'm not ready yet. And for the first time in my life, I am allowing myself to not be ready without apologizing for it. My father called me on my birthday. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail, just happy birthday, kiddo, we love you. I hope you're doing okay. His voice sounded older than I remembered. I sat with that for a while. My brother has not reached out. I did not expect him to, and I am not waiting. Here's what I know now at 31, that I didn't know at 21. Being quiet is not the same as being agreeable. Showing up is not the same as being seen. Loving people is not the same as accepting how they treat you. And the moment someone tells you that you don't participate in your own family, when you have been participating your entire life, invisibly, thanklessly, without acknowledgement, that is not a moment for an argument. That is a moment for a door to close. I have thought a lot about the co-signing situation, about whether I was wrong to refuse. And every time I go through it, I come back to the same place. They did not ask. They decided. They submitted my name to a bank without calling me first. And when I had questions, my brother snorted. My sister rolled her eyes. My mother said I didn't participate. You do not get to list someone's name as a financial guarantor for a 30-year mortgage and then tell them they're difficult for having questions. You don't. My credit score, by the way, is 784. I checked it last week. I've been approved for pre-qualification on a small house I've been eyeing in a neighborhood I like, near a park where I walk in the mornings. It has a kitchen with a window above the sink and a backyard that's just big enough for a garden. Nobody co-signed for me. Nobody had to. My therapist asked me recently what I'd want my family to understand if I could say one thing. I thought about it for a long time. I'd want them to understand that I didn't walk out that door because I stopped loving them. I walked out because I finally started loving myself enough to stop shrinking. I walked out because love isn't supposed to feel like standing in a room full of people and being invisible anyway. I walked out because I was tired of being the person everyone needed and nobody noticed. I walked out because when my mother said I didn't participate, something in me recognized a lie so old and so practiced that there was nothing left to do but leave it behind. I still love my family. I miss the idea of the family I thought we were, or the family I spent 30 years hoping we'd eventually become. But I am done performing for people who watch and don't applaud and then wonder why the show is over. I am building something smaller and quieter and mine. A house with a kitchen window, a credit score I earned, a Sunday morning that belongs to nobody but me. And if any of them are wondering, I'm doing more than fine. I'm just not waiting on hold anymore. I've thought about this a lot since everything happened. Not obsessively. I'm past that. But in the quiet way you turn something over when you finally have the space to look at it clearly. What happened to my family wasn't one big dramatic event. It was 1,000 small ones. A table nobody offered me. A loan they co-signed for my brother without hesitation. A sigh that meant, here she goes again. Years of showing up and being counted but never counted on. Only counted when they needed something from me. And the thing about patterns like that is they don't announce themselves. You don't wake up one day and think, I am being slowly erased by the people who are supposed to love me. You just feel tired. You feel like you're always slightly apologizing for existing. You feel like no matter how much you give, the room is never quite warm enough when you walk into it. That's what I want people to understand when I tell this story. Not the mortgage, not the credit score. Those are just the details. The real thing underneath all of it is simpler and harder. What you allow becomes what people expect. And what people expect, over time, becomes what they feel entitled to. I allowed a lot, for a long time, and I allowed it because I confused love with accommodation. I thought if I made myself smaller, easier, less demanding, if I drove 2 hours without complaint and asked questions and remembered details and never asked for anything back, they would eventually see it, eventually notice. Eventually meet me somewhere in the middle. They didn't. And that's not cruelty exactly. It's just what happens when nobody is paying attention. People take the path of least resistance. My family took mine. The day I walked out of that meeting, I didn't feel powerful. I want to be honest about that. I felt sick. I felt sad in a way that doesn't have a clean word for it, the kind of sad that comes from recognizing something you'd been hoping wasn't true. But underneath that, there was something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, because here is what I know now. Self-respect is not something anyone can give you at a family meeting. It's not something you negotiate for or earn through enough years of showing up. It is a decision, a quiet, private, non-negotiable decision that you make for yourself, usually at the exact moment when the people around you are expecting you not to. My mother said I never really participated, and I genuinely think she believed it. Because participation to her looked like agreement, looked like yes, looked like signing where they needed me to sign without making it difficult. But I had been participating my whole life, just not in the way they wanted. I was participating when I figured out money on my own. When I built a credit score nobody helped me build. When I showed up every holiday with a gift and a question and a willingness to be invisible if that's what kept the peace. The hardest kind of intelligence is the kind that turns on yourself, that makes you see your own patterns clearly enough to break them. That's what this cost me. Not the relationship with my brother who hasn't called. Not the mortgage my parents had to figure out another way. The cost was looking at 31 years and understanding my own role in it. Understanding that I had taught people how to treat me slowly over decades, one small accommodation at a time. That's not self-blame, that's just honesty. And honesty, I've learned, is the beginning of every real change. I'm not done with my family. I don't know what that looks like yet. But I know it starts from a different place than where we were. It starts with me standing in the room and taking up exactly as much space as I actually take up. No more. No less.